That really started blowing my mind about what was possible if I stepped into this and not only became a speaker, but consultant and be able to consult with companies and businesses around why this mattered, why this idea of building a culture of kindness really mattered.
Good morning, everyone. It's Alice Tang from Portland, Oregon. I am the host of Women's $1 Million Conversation, where we interview guests who has earned, made, or saved $1 million. And sometimes I got the pleasure to interview good friends from the past. Today, we have one of them in front of us. Her name is Linda Cohen. Highly demand for speaking and author of 2 books. So welcome, Linda Cohen. What do you do? Could you tell us a little bit about you?
Thank you so much, Alice. I am a professional speaker and a consultant. I've written 2 books on the topic of kindness. The one is The 1,000 Mitzvahs and the Economy of Kindness book. I consult with businesses and organizations, and I am going to be named the Global Kindness Ambassador for the state of Oregon from Kindness Worldwide this year. And I'm really excited to be able to see how that opens up collaborative opportunities as well in this space.
Very good. She is the kindness ambassador. She is the agent of kindness. To kick things off, we like to ask the typical question: did you earn, save, or sell the first million?
I would say earn, and it was alongside my husband. My business was alongside his business as well, and together we have earned and saved our first million.
Very good. I love to go a level deeper. How long does it take for you to get to that million? Our audience will receive that goosebumps because, it's a real person.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was slow growing. I definitely was in my own business. So it was probably a decade for us to be able to do that. So not overnight success. And it was also on a shoestring and bootstrapped at the beginning.
Very good. So talking about your business, actually, I feel very special that I was there. National Speakers Association Oregon, who put together Influence Oregon. And I guess at that time we had maybe 70 to 100 of us in the room. And I think the MC asked us to talk about something. And of course, I didn't have the guts to do anything. But Linda was the first person who ran up the podium and talked about the 1,000 acts of kindness. So can you just tell us about kindness, how it all kicked off, and why is it important to you?
I want to just say that at the time that I stepped into that 1,000 Mitzvahs project, and the word mitzvah is a good deed, it's an act of kindness in Judaism and in Hebrew, and it was this idea of taking that project on after my father passed away. At the time that I took that project on, I had no idea where the business was heading. I was simply grieving for the loss of a parent, trying to find some way to move through that, and that was 2007. That was, a blog. I was writing about it. I was speaking about it, but not in a professional way quite yet, more like for schools and houses of worship that wanted me to come in and speak. And I don't think at that time I knew the vision of where it was heading until I joined the National Speakers Association and realized that there was actually a profession of speakers. Like that was actually something you could do. I used to get in trouble for being too talkative growing up. So it was the culmination of this project I had taken on and this idea that there is a profession of speakers and there's a need for it. And so that was the beginning of okay, this is what I want to do in my next chapter, was start a speaking business.
Now, going into the business, I'm sure that many new entrepreneurs would love to know about the following things that I personally want to know. Okay. We love talking about smart operation. You've built a highly agile, low overhead model using independent contractors. How do you scale your proprietary kindness framework globally without taking on massive overhead of a traditional and heavy agency workforce?
So how did I do that? I was cheap at the beginning. I mean, I remember you need like a headshot, you need a website, and my website was WordPress. And my headshot was a family friend coming to our house, standing in our backyard, who was like an amateur photographer, putting a cookie sheet with his wife and my husband holding it under my head so I would have lighting. It was not having an office and not having people who were helping me initially. As I figured out who wanted this message, who was interested in kindness. And I will say that when I started in 2013, I didn't know the answer to that. I didn't know who was going to be interested initially beyond schools, and they didn't necessarily have money at that time to pay a speaker, you know. It was figuring that out and figuring out how to learn things that were needed to be able to grow a business, and also surrounding myself with people who had already built a successful speaking business, $1 million business, attending a national conference with national speakers so I could see the breadth and possibility of this business. And that really started blowing my mind about what was possible if I stepped into this and not only became a speaker, but consultant, and be able to consult with companies and businesses around why this mattered, why this idea of building a culture of kindness really mattered to them. And it's gotten even more clear as the years have gone on how important that is for your workforce.
Yeah, well, kindness could be seen as just fluff, right? So you're going into companies to help them to see, this is an important part of it. So a lot of companies, especially the Western companies, are driven by, the return of investment. And if you are in a room with a CFO who focus on just numbers and bottom line, how would you share your story or convince them the ROI of kindness is not only important, but essential as the structure of the business?
First of all, some of the industries I speak in, they're having retention challenges. They can't keep their employees. They might not even be able to recruit them. So those two things together, how do you onboard? How do you make sure your employees like where you are working, especially if there's a staffing shortage? If you get great talent, you want to keep them. And all of that is based on how do you treat them. That culture of kindness is my employees feel empowered, they feel seen, they feel valued, and they feel recognized that they are a part of this bigger organization. If you look at your middle managers and you treat them like they are the most essential people in the organization, they're going to do the same thing for their employees. So I feel like kindness hits absolutely every piece of productivity, employee morale, being able to recruit great talent and retain them. All of those have dollar values. So kindness might not be on the spreadsheet, but if you think about all those other sections, kindness is what's going to impact it in a positive way.
When you talked about the retention and the health, the mental health of employees, I, out of the blue, have a thought in my mind and I'm going to share. And a lot of times I think we run our life too fast. That might negatively imply to people that we don't care. And especially when we are driving to a point, somebody who's taking 5 minutes to tell me the story, the point. And how can the person who is getting a little frustrated to still execute the kindness and say, I see you, but I need you to get there faster because really I don't have time.
Okay, I have two thoughts. First of all, your words matter so much. How you say that, I love what you're saying. This is a really important point, but right now I can't listen as clearly as I would like to. Let's schedule a time. Let's make an appointment. I mean, if you have someone who is a slower talker than you are, you may have to learn the skill to engage with that person in a way that's going to allow them to speak the way they do. I think as a manager, you have to meet people where they are. And one of the things, I know you were going to ask me one question, which is what's the first thing you can do? And I would say it's to get to know your people, to really get to know your people. And you may have to allot more time with the person who's getting to the subject a little slower. Time is a huge piece of how we engage in kindness with somebody that we are working side by side with. So maybe there's a little give and take both from the leader and the employee. Maybe you ask it in a nice way. But I think ultimately, if the end goal is that we want to have productivity get to the same point, you have to be able to at least be kind in the way you're saying what you need.
Yeah, I am so thrilled that you said that, because, if I feel frustrated, let's say I'm the person, the short-tempered leader in front of an employee at the beginning of my life journey, business management journey, I always feel that how can I change them? But today, I so absolutely agree with you. I can't change others. I can only change me. So one of the little giggle story I have is I did have to ask an employee to come into my room, close door, because that's the best way to share. And the first thing I said was, I need your help. I just show cards. I'm a short fuse person and it looks like I don't have time, but I do care. I need your help to help me to get to what I need in my mind when you're sharing a piece of important information for me. So think executive summary. And then I'm going to lead you to tell me like your 5 pages story if I have 30 minutes. If I have 5 minutes, me to the coffee room and keep telling me.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is you being a leader asking for what you need. And some of what I talk about in communication, hard communication, is something that people ask me about a lot right now. How do I have the difficult conversations I need to have with an employee who is not performing, or maybe we need to let go? How do I do that with compassion and kindness? And that has become something that I get asked about regularly because I think a lot of people are short fused. And if we think about it, we've all been programmed with our phones and our technology to also need things quickly. I think that's a collective challenge. So how do we do that? I think it goes down to being human beings. We show up at work, we're still holding everything else that's happening outside of our world. And so we have to give each other grace and forgiveness and understanding. And if those things are not things you're cultivating as a leader, your team will feel that. If there are things you are actively working on, your team will also feel that.
Crazy good answer. I love it. Now, fear keeps so many women from taking the leap into entrepreneurship. To the woman who's listening right now, who has a great concept but paralyzed by her next big financial or professional step, what's your advice since you've been there?
I mean, a couple of things I thought of. Number one is find people to support you who believe in your possibility. I did not have a particularly supportive family when I stepped into this work. And so I created a mastermind group of other entrepreneurial women who I thought could support me as I grew myself. So that would be the first thing. Find people who believe in you, maybe even before you believe in yourself, and surround yourself with them, or at least try to make regular conversations with them. You have to jump first before you know what the whole outcome will look like. So I would say find people who are doing what you want to do and are already successful at it. And I remember sitting with a few of those people from NSA, some other women who were already pretty successful in their own, consulting and speaking, and they believed that I could do it too. And so they supported that possibility for me. And then I would say, spend your money on personal development, professional development, whatever that looks like. And for me, that was showing up at those conferences, those national conferences, year after year, to rub elbows with people who were already doing the work I wanted to do. And even if I had to, on a shoestring, share a room, save and scrimp to be able to get to that conference, show up so that I could be there to be able to learn what I could learn and take the little nuggets to improve my business.
Wow. I want to thank you for being so transparent or emotionally naked. There is a term there in sharing some of the things that you have done, because a lot of people in general, when you say, how are you? How's business? The answer from a man, I mean, no criticism there, but standard, they are more confident. They would say, business is good. I'm so good. For me, the best moment when I feel like I am growing is when I accept and admit that I'm not doing really well. This one year in September, I would say 15, 20 years ago, I am, 20 to 30% of my year target sitting in September. Every year I have my target and my goal in order to be evaluated. I asked for help. I just said, I didn't know what I did wrong, but I can. So many people come and help. And I just finished. Barely hit the line, but I did.
Ask for help. That is so important. I mean, in my world, leaders are getting a little bit more authentic and transparent. And I think talking about what is hard in their businesses. And of course, we've had economic changes. So I think people are okay with maybe this year I'm struggling, and I know as speakers, people were really honest about that in the last 6 years, how things had been bumpy for each of us. Yeah, I think it's really important to be honest and ask for help. I don't think that's a sign of weakness at all. I think it's a sign of you being a human being. And I will say we've had some bumpy seasons when my husband had medical, challenges. And all I could think about was caring for my husband in a time where I'm trying to grow a business. I'm having my own kind of midlife crisis or whatever. So how do you get through those seasons and come out of them stronger?
Yes, yes, Linda, I like to, use your word kindness here. You just inspire me. Think asking for help is being kind to yourself. Because a lot of times when we don't ask, it's like, I don't want to look bad. I don't want to be perceived as weak.
And I encourage leaders when I'm talking about kindness to self, it's your role modeling. You're role modeling that asking for help is okay. You're role modeling that creating boundaries and life balance is okay. Taking your PTO. If you don't do that as a leader, your team will not think they can do that either. And I took a sabbatical, Alice, last winter in December. I've not taken a sabbatical. Actually, I took a sabbatical when my dad died, and I called that a spiritual sabbatical. That was my own personal thing. But this was, I'm closing the business. I'm not going to be posting on social media. I didn't have any clients. And I basically took an entire month off at the behest of a coach, a spiritual coach who was advising me, a business coach. And I was terrified. I remember thinking, oh my gosh, what's January going to look like if I take my foot off the gas? I am so glad I did that. It was absolutely what I needed after a couple of years of, healthcare challenges and stuff going on in our own family. And it was refreshing. Like I came back in January totally filled up my bucket. And so I would encourage people, and I came back thinking I want to help other leaders do the same thing. I don't think sabbatical and rest should be the thing you do when you're going to the doctor because you're having a health emergency. It should be what we put into our lives as a regular thing. And in the United States, that is not what we do. Vacation is such a secondary thing in the US, and I think we have to change that. So that's another piece of my kindness work as I move forward in this next chapter. That's going to be rest, maybe sabbatical, maybe time off that's okay and sanctioned by the organizations.
Yeah, there is a lot of return on investment for taking time off. This morning I was talking to another friend. It drives clarity, if nothing else. When you put your mind off, not for an hour, not for a day or a week, but a longer time, out of the blue, your mind has a lot of information. You are giving your mind time to connect the dots. And maybe you should not run to the current goal or the current direction. And how did you know that you need to course correct? You have no time to think about it.
Exactly. Exactly. And I would encourage people, December is actually a pretty great time for a sabbatical because if you take Thanksgiving off anyway and you get a couple days for New Year's, I ended up with like 6 weeks closed down and it was fabulous. Yeah. And so I thought last year, could I do this again in December? I had decided to do that sabbatical literally 3 weeks before December last year. It was more like I had hit a wall and felt like I was burnt out so deeply that I needed that. Not checking email. For an entrepreneur could feel terrifying, And I set up a system so that my digital gal behind me could check my email if I wanted to. Guess what? There were like a couple of emails that I actually needed to respond to. Everything else could wait till January.
Awesome. Well, on Women's $1 Million Conversation, we talk a lot about ultimate tipping points. When you stop trading time for money and start using your money to buy back your time, where are you on that spectrum today, Linda? And what is the ultimate luxury or personal freedom that your business success can buy you right now? Because what's money for is to serve an end, right? To serve a goal.
Exactly. I think it is. I think I am on the upswing of that. I think that I've gotten to the place where together collectively with my husband, who I've been married to for 33 years, we are deciding how to live our life, which means getting to the sunshine every winter. And we've been doing that now for several years now that we have no children in the house. I actually made a decision I was going to have a car service going to the airport for all of my work opportunities a couple years ago. I just felt like I know that a male CEO would do that. Why am I waiting for the Uber or the taxi? And so I started working with a car service here, and it's so luxurious to get picked up by a car service that knows me and they're waiting for me at the end of the airport after I come home from a trip. And it's really changed my mindset. Even traveling with a higher mindset. I want to sit in business class. I feel like that allows me to think like I am like a millionaire.
Yeah. So funny that you said that. So I look like a million, but she is. Yeah, when it's all said and done, and you're looking at the ripple effects of your business and really your good deed, because you're doing what you love to do, which is awesome. What is the ultimate legacy you want to leave the world, or how would you like to be remembered?
I feel like my legacy it's already here. I raised two fantastic children with my husband. I'm so proud of them and watching them blossom. I know people think of me as the kindness catalyst. I mean, I get emails every week from somebody who hears a story and thinks of me. So whatever I have done, and I will thank my father because I feel like there has been divine providence in this whole journey since his passing in 2006 to propel me to this next part of my life and using the skills that he and my mom gave me to do work in this world that feels really important.
Wow, what a beautiful closing. Thank you for sharing the time with me and our audience, and your living example and role modeling to the world definitely has made a huge impact to many, including me. You were kind enough to come into an event that we host and help women who learned about kindness and about your story of the economy of kindness. Linda, we love you. We thank you.
Thank you, Alice.
Loving this conversation, give us a like. It helps other ambitious women find these essential insights.